Just before this video gets going, I do want to mention that I have a Discord server. Join if you want to, suggest new video ideas, or come hang out with us. And if you like what you see here today, you'll like pretty much everything else on my channel, so why not subscribe? Thanks. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. And today we're going to be talking about Destiny 2 Renegades and how I feel after the first day, going through the campaign, experiencing the story, looking at all the exotics, and actually getting to play. First things first though, let's talk about the numbers, because that's literally going to be what anybody ever cares about, especially on Twitter and YouTube, because that's what drives views, and negativity is just rampant. I believe the peak that we hit today was around 80,000, almost 80,000, 79,000 I think, which is a bit less than what Edge of Fate released at, which was I believe 100,000, which was the previously record low for a day one expansion release. Understandable, seeing as the final shape was the stepping off point for a majority of people who even played the game, and considering how horrible Edge of Fate pretty much was, aside from the narrative, from usual issues like bugs to other grievances like people not really enjoying the Metroidvania style expansion, and how the gameplay was just too many puzzles, which didn't really make for a fun experience. I mean, it was kind of cool, I guess, the first couple of times, but across the entire campaign it just got too repetitive. And that's not even to mention the fact that the portal was received very poorly and wasn't really that friendly to the power level grinding experience. Neither was the raid, which were fixed in later updates, but by that time the damage had already been done. So to be honest with you, it's no real surprise that the numbers were this low on day one, not to mention the fact that even before this expansion came out, and this is just a side note, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, yeah, I just never really got into Star Wars, or Star Wars really just never was for me, more than I have in the weeks leading up to the expansion's release, which was not only a little bit odd to me considering we're all playing Destiny, but it was also a little bit eye-opening, because to be completely honest with you, I just kind of always thought that a lot of people were into Star Wars, never really knew that so many people weren't into it like that. And so it's stuff like this that has made me and a bunch of other level-headed people to come to the realization that going into this expansion, you shouldn't really expect that this is going to be something that saves the game, because if you do that, you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. And so obviously it's better to just have a level-headed approach going into it if you're going to play, and to just go and enjoy yourself. Whether you like Star Wars or not, this expansion was really good, and there's still new content coming. Just a bit of food for thought, but let's talk about the story. I really enjoyed this campaign, and no, that's not just me saying that as a Star Wars and Destiny fan, although I do believe that being a Star Wars fan is going to be more towards your benefit, especially considering all the nods to Star Wars that this expansion had. The campaign, as I understand it, is us and Anor Mahal, the Praxic Warlock, as well as Eris Morn, the Hive God of Vengeance, helping Drifter bring down the Baron Imperium, who are an offshoot of Kylo's cabal that she controls. However, the Nine are involved, primarily Six, as he has led someone like Dredgen Bale to perceive himself as the fated weapon, even though that's our guardian, and has essentially made him leader of the Baron Imperium, with Premier Loom as his second in command. I feel like at the start of the story, there was this kind of Sith Master to Sith Apprentice relationship going on between Premier Loom and Dredgen Bale. However, as the story progressed, I could get the sense that Bungie was trying to show us that it was more of Six being the Sith Master type of character, along with Dredgen Bale being the apprentice. I do just want to note that the voice acting for Dredgen Bale was really good as well, conveyed a lot of emotion, even during scenes that we really didn't get to see Bale, I guess, act out, such as when he's trying to remember stuff from his past before he thought of himself as the weapon, or like later on in the campaign when he has that realization that Six is just using him. Anor Mahal is somebody who we finally get to meet after all this time. I think she's had lore going back to D1, or at the very least she's been a character that we've heard of for a very long time, I believe since Forsaken. And I think the first time we ever really interacted with her was in the lore. So this is the first time we've actually gotten to see her in action using her Praxic Blade and pretty much being as straight-laced as she is in the lore. Her character design is also something that really does fit her. I feel like it's a positive because it's simple and neat at the same time, not really straying too far from what her personality is or what you would, I guess, think she would have looked like before we saw any previews of this expansion. And the Praxic Blade choreography between Bale and Anor Mahal, I feel like really set the tone for the rest of the expansion. It got me hype. Like, just to say it plainly, that was some cool stuff. Even to the little things, especially with Dredgen Bale's crash out at the end, sort of reminiscent of how Kylo Ren kind of crashes out when things don't go his way. It was really funny. Now, oddly enough, this was the shortest campaign that I feel like we've had in a while. I can't really think of anything that comes close to it. It was only 6 missions. However, I'm not exactly mad at that. A lot of times with Destiny, whenever you go through an expansion or I guess some sort of season or episode, right, you'll definitely get those activities, or you'll definitely get those times in the campaign or the main story where you'll be expected to do certain things that just seem like they're there to extend playtime. And with this expansion, I don't really think that there was a lot of that going on, if any at all. And as a matter of fact, I'd rather them not put a bunch of fluff in a campaign or a story like how I kind of felt with Edge of Fate. Rather, in the future, I'd want them to do something more akin to this. And it was the fact that I was able to follow what's going on through the story. I was into it. I was engaged throughout the entire way. And I feel like having a good 6 missions is better than just having a good beginning and a good end and some alright stuff in between, kind of like how other expansions have done. Now, I will say this, that my favorite mission was the last one. Even though I enjoyed the entire campaign, that 6th mission, my God. If you are a fan of SRL, you're going to like this last mission because that's what it essentially turns into in the last part. And if I'm completely honest, I was having so much fun that I didn't even realize that I got that entire raceway done in one setting, as in I didn't really die. I definitely got close, as you can see in the background gameplay, but it was a very enjoyable experience for me. For whatever reason, this expansion kind of had me wondering what the cutscenes would be like, and of course I had to put the best drip on imaginable simply for these cutscenes. And specifically in this last mission, there's a part where you jump out of the window and onto a speeder bike. And for whatever reason, maybe it was because it was just so damn cool and I didn't really expect this to happen, it made me smile from ear to ear. I really like how far Drifter's character has come since Forsaken, coming in as this shady guy that nobody really knows anything about, with this mysterious game that Guardians apparently love, a normal Hall breathing down his neck ever since he stepped foot into the city, him truly being a wild card within the characters that we have met. For him to go from this mysterious guy that just showed up all of a sudden and had a past as a dredgen to what we see today, somebody who's willing to put his life on the line for Eris, and for us to actually get to meet his ghost, learn a lot more about his character and their relationship. I'd say personally that Drifter's character arc is like the second best that Destiny has done. The first being, of course, Crow or Uldren Sov, and that scene with Drifter and us and Dredgen Bale, where Drifter shoots off Dredgen Bale's hand with the thorn, which allows us to find out that he's not a light bearer as we thought, and that he doesn't even have a ghost, which is then further confirmed within the lore. I believe in one of the Sparrows, it talks about the grotesque appearance of Dredgen Bale and how he actually looks and what's going on with his nose and him ripping it off and stuff like that. But that scene in the campaign, it was shocking to me, to say the least. Another pleasant surprise that I got during the campaign was Zavala. We get to see him admitting to living in fear over the last year, which, we haven't seen him in a year since the final shape. And the reason why he was doing so was because of his lost ghost. Of course, if you remember, his ghost was crushed by the hands of the witness in the final shape, which left him in a state that he's never been in before. Losing your ghost as a guardian is something akin to losing a part of you, so it's very understandable. I also do like this kind of mini conflict that ends up getting, I guess, resolved at the end of the story. First between Commander Zavala and Norma Hall, which is then later branched out to Lodi and Ikora as they talk. But there have been a lot of disturbances going on ever since the death of 3, blood like rain happening on Earth, Guardians reporting in certain areas that there are transmutations going on. There's a lot of weird stuff that's happening on Earth, and the people don't really know why it's happening. Honora wants to tell them because she thinks that they have a right to know, but Zavala says no to that because he doesn't want to risk the city being thrown into pandemonium due to just the sheer insanity of what's been going on since the final shape. Lodi and Ikora in the lore meet up together to eat, and they end up discussing something like this, and they both agree with Honora that the people should know. However, they can't both bring themselves to directly defy commands, especially from a superior. But there's a part in that lore tab that might tell us where the direction of Zavala is headed in the future of Destiny, especially considering the fact that 3, while speaking through his emissary, called Ikora Commander, which is the title that Zavala currently has. So if you're following, Zavala could be stepping down and passing the mantle to Ikora in the coming expansions. Finally, I do have a little bit of a nitpick, and it has to do with the crime syndicates that we interact with throughout the story. I feel like if they had voices, if Bungie was able to get some more voice actors to bring these characters to life a little bit more, it definitely would have helped and put the cherry on top, at least for me, regarding this expansion. But the narrative was once again a strong point. Unlike Edge of Fate, however, if we're going to talk about gameplay, things were really fun this time. I remember in my Edge of Fate review, I told you that I fell asleep during the final mission, and that was simply because of the gameplay and the puzzles just kind of taking their toll. I told you it was repetitive, like really repetitive. Things weren't like that this time around. The new destination abilities that we have for the activities and during the campaign are the Helldiver-esque stratagems that we can call down at any time. However, we only have 2 chances to really use them throughout any mission. You can pick 2 of 3 sets of abilities, each tied to a criminal syndicate, which end up being really strong and a helpful way to clear ads, especially if you're doing solo content and you find yourself in a pinch. There's stuff for damage, there's stuff for healing. One of the abilities allows you to track people through walls, which is going to of course help you a ton when you're doing an invasion bounty, and it's pretty much you versus an entire team after you've wagered your coins. Now moving on to the weapons, I knew I was going to like the blaster type weapons as soon as I saw them, but I didn't really think I was going to like Uncivil Discourse, the hand cannon, as much as I did. That thing hits hard and it feels powerful, and the sound design on the weapon, much like the other blaster type weapons, just fits, especially for this expansion. They really knocked it out of the park, and honestly I can't wait to get my hands on some of those dungeon weapons, especially the auto rifle that's coming out. There's a little bit of a learning curve that you have to get used to, this being with the reload mechanic. The primary ammo weapons will be able to shoot infinitely, and if you're able to time it right, when you hit reload again after trying to reload the first time, specifically with the dynamic heat weapons, you'll get a couple of seconds of reduced heat buildup. This just adds another layer to the combat of the game, and it's a nice touch. The new exotic machine gun Service of Luzaku seems like it would be a pretty good fit for any Strand build, especially the one with Warlock and the Strand helmet. Honestly, with that build specifically, I can't wait to try that out and take that into new content, and just to see how it does in higher level stuff. The Praxic Blade, or the lightsaber, was introduced in a really cool way. I do like the fact that the exotic mission for the weapon was in the campaign itself as opposed to being separate from the campaign. And this is just me thinking out loud, but I think the reason why the exotic mission difficulty wasn't really that high was because the campaign difficulty, even on legendary, was pretty easy. But the weapon itself might be one of the most customizable things that we've ever had in the game, or at least for a very long time. You can customize everything from the hilts to the crystals, down to the masterworks, of which there are 4, I believe, and the weapon feels pretty strong. The sound design on it is exactly what you would expect from a lightsaber, and so for me there's very little to be desired when it comes to this weapon. I do want to touch on another thing about the Praxic Blade, and that's regarding the monetization. In order to get other hilts besides the default, and I believe 3 other crystals, to change the color of the lightsaber, you need to pay for it. It's about $10 per hilt and crystal. They're sold in a pack in Eververse. I've heard some critiques regarding this aspect of the Praxic Blade, but the fact that you can, I believe, earn 6 of the 9 total crystals, which includes the one that a lot of people want, the Taken Crystal or the Darksaber, I feel like is a really good thing. Bungie has to make money off of the weapon. So yeah, there's going to be cosmetics in the Eververse store for the main weapon that people were excited about. And in my personal opinion, it doesn't really make sense to get mad about something like this, seeing as though most of the cooler colors are earnable. Now I'll quickly go over abilities before we wrap things up. I'll put it simply, as a hunter main, it feels good to do damage again. During the Edge of Fate, it was really a struggle for hunters, so much so that I ended up playing Titan and Warlock way more, just to be a little bit more useful during raids and dungeons. Most of the subclasses ended up getting a buff, and I think having Matiodoxia for the Warlocks be the kind of new Curious of the Falling Star for a Warlock definitely was the right call, because ever since it came out, I don't think people have been using it as much, or at least I haven't seen it used as much. Oh, and Banner Shield for Titans. Let me just talk about that for a quick second. Wow. Who would have thought that you guys would have one of the best burst damage supers in the game right now? I don't really know what the meta is going to be, but I really wouldn't be surprised if Void Titan would be a top contender. Finally, let's talk about some of the things that I didn't like. When it comes to the ratio or the split of Destiny and Star Wars, I think it leans more towards the Star Wars side rather than Destiny, which I don't really mind. I'm a fan of both Star Wars and Destiny, so I was going to like this regardless. But at times it just kind of feels like a little bit too much. For me, I feel like that point was the Sarlacc Pit mission where we're trying to help out Spider on Mars. And from that point forward, the entire campaign, even after I finished it, and even though I liked it, it just kind of had this feeling of, I don't know, it just felt like it was a one-off thing. As in, it wasn't really a part of the main story of the Fate saga. Even though narratively, Bungie accomplished exactly what they set out to do. They pushed the narrative forward, and though there are some things I didn't like about the DLC, I still have more questions and want to see more. One of my worries about this whole DLC is the longevity of the activity that we have, which is, I guess, the new replacement for the destination that we would have gotten had this been a bigger DLC. This is only really a question that will be answered after a while with the game, let's say next month, but I don't really know how long the bounties that you're going to be going on after the campaign will hold the audience that we have right now. In my opinion, I feel like it'll only hold out for a month and a half, and then we'll be back to where we started. My hope is that the next halfway update will be a lot better than Ash and Iron. In a perfect world, we'd have both a new destination to go on and explore, as well as a new activity, but things are limited right now, so this is the best we got for right now. There's a bit of an issue with the dialogue that happens with transitioning from planet to planet. Sometimes it'll begin while you're loading into a mission and then it'll get cut off as soon as you load in. And it sucks because I first noticed this last night when I was replaying the campaign, and I got to the part of the story where 4 was talking to 6, and Eris and Lodi were trying to find out more about why 6 is doing this in the first place, and then it got cut off at the good part. Furthermore, on the topic of dialogue and talking to characters, I hate how we have to sometimes go to certain locations more than once to just have a quick phone call with either Drifter or Anor. It just doesn't really make any sense. I don't know why they can't just speak to us where they are. I mean, they literally could just call us. I don't understand why we have to go to the derelict or to Tharsis outpost to just go speak with them. It kind of breaks the immersion of the campaign, or at least it did for me, and I just kind of had to get back into it, I guess. And I'd really prefer that Bungie not do this in the future, because there's just other ways to go about it. In my personal opinion, I feel like the experience overall was an 8.5 out of 10. Now, is it worth the $40 that you'll pay for it? I'll have to answer that question after the dungeon comes out. Right now, we're only at about like $25 worth of content, so we'll see. We still have a lot to go in the season, more weapons to get. Trials is happening on the 19th. Like I said, the dungeon's happening on the 13th. The Dawning is happening sometime soon. And if the Dawning event is anything like the Halloween event or even like Call to Arms, then it's going to be a good one. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button. If you want more content similar to this, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Sub up, stay safe, and peace.